Are you ready to cook something? Because I'm in the kitchen. Today we are going to be making almond bars. And I found this recipe a long time ago, and it is tasty and it is a pretty presentation. I actually think it's a very pretty cake if you put it on a platter. It just looks really good. But most of all, it's tasty. And I haven't made it in a while. It's actually relatively easy to make, but I just haven't made it. So let's make it today. To make these almond cake bars, you are going to need the flour and your sugar. You're going to need 4 eggs, 1 cup of butter, almond paste, and you can usually just get this in the baking aisle. You're going to need 2 types of jelly, something complimentary, something like a strawberry and an orange. You don't want like strawberry and raspberry. You're going to need vanilla flavoring, almond flavoring, baking soda. You're going to need to use food coloring, and I don't have to use the expensive cake decorators. I'm just using the straight up cheapies. You're going to need salt, and you're going to need chocolate chips. So not a whole lot of ingredients. So let's get started. The very first thing you're going to do is you're going to preheat your oven to 350 degrees. And then you are going to prepare your pan. You are going to need a 9x13 pan. Now you can use one 9x13 pan, but you're going to have to take the time to bake each individual cake separately because there's going to be 3 layers in this. So if you happen to have 3 pans, go ahead and prepare all 3 of them. First thing you're going to do is you're going to actually take some wax paper and you're going to put it in the bottom of the pan. And then you want to just make sure, that you just cut that to size. And you're, like I said, you're going to do this 3 times. So I'm just taking a pen and I'm marking around it. And then I'm just going to snip so that the wax paper fits my pan nicely. And I did save some time by cutting all my wax papers at the same time. Now the process is going to be the same for each of the pans. You're going to actually spray it with your cooking spray. I use the Misto. And then you want to line the bottom of your pan with your wax paper and then give it another little coat of spray. And you're going to do this 3 times. So once your pans are ready, it is time to actually start preparing the batter. So we're going to start with creaming your butter and your sugar together. You are going to need 1 cup of sugar and 1 cup of butter. You're going to put that into your mixer, into whatever mixer you have and you use. And you're just going to put that into your mixer like you would any other time. And I left mine out at room temperature so it will be easier to mix. And then we're going to take the 1 cup of sugar. Looks like I need to refill my sugar canister. And you're just going to turn your mixer on and you're going to cream those 2 things together. As it starts to mix in, we are going to open up the almond paste. I have actually purchased this in cans. This one is in a tube. You can see it's kind of soft because it is a paste. And we're just going to cut it open. And you can see it just opens on up like this. And it really is just a paste. Now I'm going to go ahead and put it into there in pieces just because it makes it a little bit easier. So I have my butter now and I've got my sugar. I've got my almond paste. And I'm going to turn that on high and we're going to beat that together.
I'm going to go ahead and give it a little mix every once in a while, just to make sure that it is mixed up nicely. And once that is mixed nicely, we are going to start adding our eggs to the bowl one at a time. And I am going to stop and scrape the sides of my bowl to make sure that everything is incorporated really well, because it wasn't incorporating all that well. Once we have that done, we are going to add in 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. And we're going to add in 1/2 teaspoon of the almond extract. So even with the almond paste, we want a little bit more. And then we're going to mix that in. Oh my, it smells delicious. I'm going to throw in my 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And my 1 teaspoon of baking soda. Once you have that mixed in, we're going to go ahead and we are going to add in 2 cups of flour, and I just missed my container. Oh well. And as you mix it, let's go ahead and simply mix it through. Make sure everything is mixed up good. You can see my flour is at the top, so I'm just stirring it in, making sure that everything is thoroughly mixed. And let's give it another mix. After you get your batter mixed, we're going to grab 2 extra bowls, and we are going to divide this cake batter into 3 equal portions. So I have 2 extra bowls, and then we'll have here, and so let's start dividing. As you can see, this is a really thick batter. It's not exactly as thick as cookies per se, but it's definitely not as thin as, let's say, a cake. So it's kind of a combination of the two. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put them into 3 different bowls. Now, a lot of times I won't do the 3rd bowl just because I don't want to have to do another one, but I'm going to do it official this time and make 3 different bowls. And you see I'm just kind of evenly putting them into each bowl. Want to have each little cake to be the same size. Now that I have my 3 individual bowls, I'm going to go ahead and color my cakes. Now, I am making this at Christmas, so I'm going to do 1 green. And we're just gonna mix that up. And if it's not, Kiwi says hi. And if it's not green enough, we're just gonna add more green to it. So we're just gonna mix in the green. And that looks pretty good for the green one. And I'm going to also do 1 of red because it is Christmas when I'm filming this. And then we're going to do the exact same thing. And once again, if it looks a little too pink, we just add more red in. And just make it look how you want it to look. I want it to be a little bit more red. So we're going to add a little bit more. Now once your color is totally mixed up, you're just going to take your batter and you're going to put it into your pan. And this will get a little bit icky because it is such a thick batter. It's not just going to miraculously spread out over your pan like a cake batter would. So you're going to have to spend a little bit of time. So I got it all into my pan now. And then I'm just going to spread it out. It is going to be a nice thin layer. It's not going to be overly thick because we're putting stuff in between these. And so it does slide a little bit in your pan, but you're just going to spread it out. And you want to try to get it spread out somewhat evenly so that your cake is even and flat whenever you actually put it together. And then once you have your batter in your pan, you're going to pop it in the oven for about 12 minutes. Now, if you only have one pan, you can do them one at a time and bake them that way. If you have three pans like that, you can put all of them in at the same time. It makes no difference. It all is up to you. And we will come back in 12 minutes and see what they look like. So the cakes are all baked. They've all been baked for about 10 to 12 minutes at 350 degrees Fahrenheit. So I'm going to start with a cookie sheet, and I laid the first layer down, and that's going to be a green layer. So what I'm doing is I'm just going to take some jelly that I have at the house, and I'm going to pop that onto my bottom layer. And I have more strawberry if I do need it. And I'm just going to spread a layer of strawberry jelly right on this thing. We just want to make sure everything gets a little bit of that yummy goodness. Doesn't need to be a lot of jelly. You just want to make sure that it is all covered. You want to do seedless because you're not going to want seeds inside your almond bars. So we do that. Once I have that fully covered, I'm going to take the next layer, and I did my bottom layer was green, so my next layer is going to be red or pink or whatever color you want it. And you are going to place that on top. We're now going to take our second type of jelly, and I'm going to use sweet orange marmalade. I'm going to clean off my knife here. And I'm going to put some of the orange jelly marmalade on there next. Once again, it doesn't need to be very thick. I just need it to spread so that the flavors marry and mend and meld with the almond bars. And you're just eyeballing it. Now you can measure it out, and I will tell you the measurements. The measurements of what the recipe calls for is below, but you know, I'm just in the mood for a little bit of this and a little bit of that. Okay. I think I've got some jelly onto all corners of my cake pieces. And I'm not worried about the pan because that's going to be moved anyway. And then I'm going to take my last layer, which is for me the green, and I'm going to lay it on top. Now I'm going to want my creation to kind of start to blend together. So I'm going to grab some wax paper, and I'm going to just place some on top just so that my saran wrap doesn't stick. And then I'm going to get my plastic wrap, and I'm going to cover this. And I'm covering it because I simply just don't want this to get hard. I want this to actually stay moist and soft. So I'm just going to cover it. And I did a horrible job of ripping my saran wrap. Oh well. It doesn't need to be perfect. Just needs to be there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take something heavy. In this case, it is going to be my cutting board, and I did have the cake sitting on it. It's going to be my cutting board, and I'm going to just set that on top of it and let that weight sit on it just to kind of push it together and make sure that this cake is put together as a full piece of one device. And now I'm just going to let that sit for about 2 or 3 hours at bare minimum. Overnight works also. So it's now been sitting here for a couple hours. I'm just going to go ahead and remove my cutting board. And you can see that it has now been nicely consolidated into one piece. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to just take some chocolate chips. And it's nothing fancy. I'm just going to put them in a bowl. I'm going to melt them in the microwave. So at this point, I'm just going to take my chocolate chips, and I do like the semi-sweet, and I'm going to open up the bag, and I'm going to pour them into a glass bowl. You can melt these over a double boiler. I'm just going to put mine in the microwave for 30 seconds at a time, stir them up, put them in for another 30 seconds until my chocolate is melted. Let's get to that. I'll be right back. So the biggest thing when you're melting chocolate in the microwave is just do it in 30-second increments. And you want to make sure you don't scorch your chocolate. Basically get it till it's just where you see a couple little lumps, and then just stir those little lumps out. And then what we're going to do is I'm just going to pour this chocolate right over top of my dessert. My yummy goodness. And then just spread your chocolate around. Now I like to spread it to the edges. Make sure you're the whole way to the edge because we are going to be cutting this. We're not going to have to worry about the edges so much so because that's part of the joy of this cake is actually looking at the pretty different layers. So just make sure your chocolate is nicely spread. And then we're going to let this cool one more time until the chocolate is hardened back up. Once it's hardened back up, we are going to cut this down. Now, when I cut this down, that's where the prettiness comes, because when we cut it on the inside, you're going to see those different layers, and it's just a really pretty dessert, and it tastes amazing. Now, when I first got this recipe, it was from a Weight Watchers book, and it actually had me cut it into 1-inch squares, roughly 1-inch squares. That's a little bit small, so I typically do mine in about a 1.5-inch square, maybe 2-inch. But you can adjust it accordingly for the calories that you want, or points, whatever you're counting. This is such a pretty dessert. I hope you enjoy our baking session today, and I hope you try it and hope you like it as much as I do. No excuses.